What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. ADP risers and fallers looking at running backs, and this wasn't supposed to be the first time I made this video, but there's been so much less volume on sites this season that ADP data has just been way behind where it usually is. Like, it's mid-August, and by this time, usually ADPs have somewhat stabilized, and we're only going to see changes when news comes out or someone suffers an injury. But with so many leagues just not drafting yet, ADPs are still way off, which means it is definitely an advantage if you wanted to start your league a little bit earlier this season. Obviously, most people don't want to do that, but if you do happen to be drafting right now, it is an advantage to you if you're paying attention because the sites are still off. But it also means that we can't fully trust ADP data. So for this video, I'll just be looking at the change in ADP. So looking at ESPN, who's been moving up and who's been moving down the most over the last 7 days. And I'll kind of compare it to like the average ADP over the industry, kind of looking at FFPC data. But in general, we're just talking about who's been moving the most. Before we start that, I gotta do the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which wide receiver with at least 50 receptions had the longest reception in 2019. The answer was Robbie Anderson. Today's stat, which quarterback ranked dead last in average intended air yards per pass attempt last season? All right, let's see who's rising and falling the most over the last week. I feel like it would be best to just start out with the Darius Geis situation, since obviously he's the number one faller, just not being drafted at all anymore. So Washington cut Geis after he was arrested, and he's going to be suspended for, I don't know, like maybe 6 to 8 weeks. Kind of seems like a good indication. But that's once a team signs him, and I don't really think that'll even happen this season. So just assume he will not be playing this year, but definitely won't be playing for Washington. So they're left with Peterson, Gibson, Barber, and Love. So obviously all these guys are going to rise in the rankings when Geis leaves. We see the biggest rise coming from Peterson and Gibson. They rise the third and fourth most among running backs. But Love seems to be staying undrafted everywhere. So Peterson's going in like the 15th. I think that's going to keep rising. We might see him jump into like the 12th or 13th round. Tough to say exactly how high he'll go, going the 15th right now though. While Gibson is already going in the 11th. And I think that could go up a little bit more, but I'd be surprised if he goes into the 9th. Maybe he jumps into the 10th round, but I think that's probably where we see him end up. So my take on that, Gibson's going too early in my opinion. I talked about him in one of the first videos this summer, and while I didn't think it would come because Geis was arrested, I said that I thought sometime in August there's going to be some sort of hype on Gibson and he's going to pick up steam and people are going to overdraft him. His best season in college came in his last year where he had 33 carries and 38 receptions. You heard that right. 33 carries, 38 receptions in his best season. Only 77 total touches in his college career. So that player is creeping into the 10th round in redraft leagues as basically the pass catching back on a team projected for 4.5 wins, which for the millionth time is a negative. I know people like to say, oh, it's a bad team. That means they're going to play from behind. It's going to be a ton of receptions, right? It's a bad thing for all running backs to be on a low scoring offense, even a pass catching back, because it severely limits your upside when you're not making it into the red zone. There aren't very many yards and touchdowns to go around. So bad thing being on a team that's going to win like 4 or 5 games. I just think people are expecting Gibson to be some do-it-all back, but he's still a rookie. He still had 77 total touches in college. Still plays on Washington. So I understand that he's more valuable now without Geis, but he still does not have that much upside, and he doesn't even have that great of a chance of hitting his upside. He's going to start out slow. He's not going to have a ton of touches. If he was some amazing player, he would have had more touches in college. I understand he's a great talent, but if he was going to be the next Christian McCaffrey, which you've heard Washington coaches just use for like every player it seems, why wasn't he that good in college? I think people need to pump the brakes just a little bit on Gibson. I will not be drafting him in this 10th or 11th round range. As for Peterson, don't like his ADP as well, at least what I think it's going to end up as. 271 and 228 touches in these last two seasons. That has still only resulted in the running back 24 and 38 in points per game. He's just not going to be fantasy relevant. He doesn't really have any sort of upside, because his upside is maybe he reaches like over 200 touches. But even last season, running back 38 in points per game with over 200 touches. So even if he hits that upside, it's still not that great for fantasy. I'd stay away. I do want to talk about Bryce Love for a minute. So I have mentioned him a few times over the summer as a guy to just keep in mind really late in drafts. But I've basically said you don't need to take him because Geis is there. And I understand that he is talented, but Geis is more talented, and he was just going to have the job. Well, Geis is gone now. So now we can move Love into a really nice late round flyer, and his ADP isn't really moving. I mean, Love rushed for over 2,100 yards and 19 touchdowns in his junior season at Stanford with 8.1 yards per carry. That's pretty good. Senior year, he had a few injuries. Then he tears the ACL. In his rookie season, he needs to have a surgery to kind of repair the ACL. So he hasn't done anything in the NFL yet. And the last time we really saw him be dominant was 2017. So I get, not really expecting him to do all that much. But it's a late round flyer. There's no success rate really in the final round of drafts. So if you're going to take a guy who could legitimately be the running back one on an offense, I mean, how many times is that available in the final round of your draft? Not that many. So I do like Love ahead of all these guys, and don't worry about Barber. He's not very good. Even if he wins the job, that just hurts all the other dudes, and then you won't be able to start him anyways. But that's enough about the worst team in the league. Let's talk about some other players. The biggest riser over the last week is Matt Breida. I did mention him in a video last Saturday, and I said I was pretty surprised to find out that he was one of the players I had ranked most above ECR and ADP. I just hadn't really looked in a while because, I don't know, I do my rankings. I don't need to pay attention to where exactly that is ahead of ECR and ADP. But when I looked, he was well ahead of both of those. And even with the rise, he's my running back 27. But on average, he's going as a running back 40. And even in the FFPC, he's only going in the 9th round. But I think that is a mistake, so I expect his ADP to continue rising as people realize that. He's been productive whenever he's been given the chance, and he'll be the team's third down back. He will be not only, so remember I say you don't want to be a third down back on a bad team like Gibson, right? 4.5 wins. Well, the Dolphins are actually expected to win 6.5 games, so a little bit better than Washington. They could get 7, they could reach 8 wins. It's not a horrible team, but Breida is the third down back, but that doesn't mean he won't have work on early downs as well. Like, he's the full-time third down back who will also get work on early downs. And he's also probably going to be the primary back when they're behind. So let's say they're down, 2 scores in the third quarter. They're probably not going to have Howard even on the field. It'll be Breida over the entire rest of the game on every drive. So I do technically have him ranked as a 6th round pick. I'd be a little hesitant to take him in the 6th round, but you won't need to. There's no way he's going to rise that much. So I have him ranked there, but you're getting a really nice discount if you get to take him at his ADP in the 9th round, or if you're on ESPN, the 11th round, which is crazy. Another running back who's fallen a lot in the rankings is Keyshawn Vaughn, and that of course comes after Arians said that Jones was going to be the guy this season, and then they go out and they sign McCoy, which just really hurts Vaughn's upside, in my opinion. We do need to take whatever Arians says with a grain of salt. He has lied to us at basically every opportunity he's been given, but I actually do think Jones will open the season as the starter. Will he finish the season as a starter? I don't know, but to open the season he will be. And I also think McCoy will be involved on some early downs and will be the team's third down back. And so for me, there's no reason to draft Vaughn. Like, even if you think he's the best running back, you think by halfway or to close the season he's going to be the guy, well, that doesn't matter because he won't be to start the season. And so anyone who drafts him is probably going to watch these games and be like, oh, he's not really doing too much, I'm going to drop him. So I do expect Vaughn to be on free agency. If you are someone who thinks that to close the season he'll be the guy, then just add him off free agency because I really think he's going to be dropped in a lot of leagues when they realize how little of a role he has to start the season. Another big name that is being dropped in ADP is Marlon Mack. He's been bumped down about a half a round this last week, still being taken in the 7th round in FFPC drafts compared to the 9th round on Yahoo and the 11th round on ESPN. So my take really just depends on where you're drafting. You know, if I'm drafting in the FFPC, I'm not taking him in the 7th round. But the 9th round is pretty fair, and I think the 11th round is a really nice value. You know, he's still going to get some carries each week, and this is still behind the best run-blocking offensive line in football. My problem with the 7th round is that he has no upside at that ADP. At least he doesn't have a great chance of hitting it while Taylor is healthy. So if Taylor remains healthy the whole season, he's not going to return 7th round value. Right? The opportunity cost is much too high. There's still some great quarterbacks, tight ends, wide receivers, even running backs available in the 7th round to where for Mack to hit, he needs an injury. And I don't want to take a player in the 7th round who needs an injury to pay off. In the 9th round, a lot of the starters are gone anyways, so he wouldn't necessarily need a Taylor injury to pay off that ADP. He still would probably need it, but he doesn't necessarily need it. He could probably come close to returning that value. In the 11th round, he doesn't even need a Taylor injury. You know, if he's going to get 10 to 12 carries a week with not much involved in the receiving game, the 10 to 12 carries a week, if he can kind of be in that range, even with Taylor healthy, he's going to return 11th round value. So again, just depends on where you're drafting. If he's available really late, take a shot because if Taylor goes down, he's going to crush whatever ADP ends up happening. But the 7th round, I mean, that's a little bit aggressive for what we expect to be the backup running back at some point in the season. Maybe the first 3 weeks he's a little bit of the primary guy, but after the first month, do we really think he's going to be the guy? No. Sony Michel, also seeing a pretty big drop in his ADP, going in roughly the 9th round in most places. I have him as an 11th round pick, so I still have him as an avoid even with the drop. Because there's no reason to draft him as well. You know, 216 and 259 touches in his first 2 seasons. That's resulted in the running back 31 and 38 in points per game. So even if he's getting over 215 touches, he's like still basically not even startable, you know, because he's not used in the receiving game and he's not even that great on the ground. So there's no upside here, you know, and then you consider he might not even be healthy to start the season. And they added Lamar Miller, and they still have Damien Harris. I mean, I see no reason, even if he falls to where I have him ranked, there's just no reason to draft him, and that's why I do have him as an avoid. Remember, that's what you use the rankings for. If I have players listed as avoid, it means that they're ranked much below ADP, and so you're probably not even going to be put into a situation where you're going to draft them. But if it does come up, just avoid them. They're the players I just don't want to get on my team. There's no upside at their ADP, and even if they fall to where they're ranked, don't touch them. So that's my take on the avoid tag in our rankings. As for Harris, I don't know. His ADP is not going up. So I looked at the risers expecting to see, well, now people are going to be drafting Harris because they're not drafting Sony. That's not the case. He's not really rising in ADP. So I've had him as a sleeper all summer. I have him as a 12th round pick. I think that's a really nice spot to take him because, I mean, the 12th round is really at the end of your bench anyways because we're taking quarterback late, taking defense. If you're in a league with kickers for some reason, you're taking that late. Like, there's only so many rounds where you're taking skill players after the 12th. So I think he's a really nice option to kind of complete your bench because of the upside. And he's available in like the final round everywhere. So I think that is really good. Last player we'll go over today is Darrell Henderson. because I'm confused. I thought I was sorting by the wrong column. I thought that after we look at McVay's comments about using a committee like San Fran did last season, well, that's a positive for Henderson, right? Because he's the second drafted running back. So if you have two running backs, right? One's going early, or I guess middle, and one's going late, and you hear, oh, it's going to be kind of a hot hand situation, well, that's a good thing for the guy going later because it means he might get more touches than we think. Okay? Makes sense. Then we see that Henderson is getting the first team reps. So there's a real situation where Henderson is just the primary back. Now, he's not going to be, 20 touches to Akers like 5. That'll not happen this season. But could he get 60% of the work? Absolutely. And so why is he dropping? Like, I guess that's what I don't understand the most. Like, what sort of news came out to where people were like, oh, can't draft Henderson anymore? Like, well, I don't get it. I thought his ADP was going to go up like half a round, and it dropped. So he's going anywhere from like the 10th to the 12th round. Again, when I talk about this range, the success rate's low. So we're just looking for players who have a chance to be the lead back. And especially if they have a chance to be the lead back on a good offense, well, those are the players you want to target. So I have him as an 8th round pick. You don't need to take him in the 8th round because, again, the earliest he's going anywhere is the 10th. But I think that is a really, really nice spot to take him because if he's going to get 60% of the work in this offense, he's going to crush that ADP. So those are the running backs that have seen their ADP change the most over the last week and my thoughts on their overall value. If you want to see my thoughts on all draftable players, then you can check that out at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. That's the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? But thanks for watching.